the SubTractor tutorial in Reason Essentials. Last time we looked at the amplitude envelope and we said we'd come on to talk a bit more about the filters. We sort of introduced the filters last time. We're going to look at those in a bit more detail now. First of all, we're going to look at what a filter actually does. Now, I've brought up one of the other devices available in Reason Essentials, the M-Class equalizer, which I think most of you will have come across an equalizer in some form or another, even if it's just a bank of sliding switches on the front of a typical sort of household stereo, the graphic equalizer, which you can move the sliders up and down to accentuate different frequencies, be they the lower end bassy frequencies or the higher end treble frequencies or the mid-range frequencies. This equalizer is just a studio version of that, if you like, and it's set up in its initiated form, where we've got 0 dB gain right across the frequencies. So on the bottom we have the frequencies. If you remember, I think back in the first session we did on SubTractor, we talked about the audible frequencies being somewhere between 40 hertz, 39 hertz, 39 beats per second. You can actually pick up on lower than that, about 20 hertz. Some of the biggest organ pipes will resonate at or vibrate at 20 cycles per second. Now, I think strictly speaking, you don't really hear those with your ears so much as you feel it with your body, but those are the sort of lowest ranges of audible vibrations, right the way up to 20,000 hertz, 20 kilohertz, where very young people can hear, with good hearing, can hear at sort of 20,000 cycles per second, or 20 kilohertz. So this line then represents the gain, or if you like, the volume control that we're applying to the various frequencies of sound. So the bass frequencies are here, the mid-range frequencies here, and the treble high-end frequencies up here. So what a filter does then is it filters out a particular frequency, a frequency that you don't want to be in the mix, in the sound. And the way it does that is a piece of electronics which cuts those frequencies out. Traditionally, there is only a single filter which will cut off anything below or above a certain frequency. So we set a cutoff frequency, and everything below that gets eliminated or filtered out. Or alternatively, everything above that frequency gets eliminated or filtered out. It doesn't get eliminated entirely, it gets something called attenuated. So there's an attenuation of the frequencies above a certain cutoff range, or an attenuation of the frequencies below a certain cutoff range. And those two types of filters are called a low pass filter and a high pass filter, because one allows low frequencies to pass through and attenuates the other frequencies, and a high pass filter allows the high frequencies to pass through and attenuates the lower frequencies. So if you look at this graphics equalizer here, and we're going to just use the low shelf and the high shelf. So what we're going to do is apply a filter which cuts out certain frequencies. And if you see, if we take this Q value down to 0 for now, we'll come on to talk about what that is. We'll do the same with the high shelf. The gain we've taken down, so this now that we've replicated here, that this low shelf is acting as what we would call a high pass filter. So the high frequencies are being allowed to pass through. So that is a high pass filter. Now, it doesn't suddenly cut them off. That there's a slope to this line here. Now the gradient of that slope is important, and the sharper that gradient is, the more the frequency is below this cutoff frequency here. I can change the cutoff frequency using this knob here, so I can move it to the left, move it to the right, and the slope of that line is the attenuation, and that is measured in something called decibels, so dB, so it's reducing it by 6 dB, 12 dB, 18 dB per frequency range. So I've got a frequency range between here and here, and depending on how steep that line is, it'll be, say, for example, minus 12 dB per octave or minus 18 dB per octave. Okay. Switching that off and looking at a low pass filter now, I'll set that up for the same situation. This is a low pass filter now because we are allowing frequencies below a certain cutoff frequency which we set here, and we can move to the left or to the right. Anything above those frequencies we attenuate again a certain number of dB per octave, an octave being a range of frequencies, and so that just sets a gradient basically. Okay, this Q value here is a lot of synthesizers use Q. The SubTractor uses something called resonance, but if we turn that up, what you can see is that we've actually put a peak in here. So we've actually accentuated the frequencies around our desired cutoff frequency. So if I move that to the left, that peak moves to the left and right. So this Q range does something called introduces resonance. And what resonance does is it accentuates a particular range of frequencies. Now if I combine, electronically filters will only work as a high pass or a low pass filter, but what I can do is have two filters. I mean, this is all a digital representation, so it's all done within the computer, but I'm talking about in an actual physical rack. I would have a piece of equipment, a piece of electronics, which had two filters in it, a high pass and a low pass filters. Now if I combine a high pass and a low pass filter in a certain way, what effectively I can do is end up with another type of filter which allows a mid-range of frequencies to come through, and I can if I move these together, I can move that band of frequencies, sorry, the wrong one there, to the left or to the right, and allow a band of frequencies through my filter, and that's called a band pass filter. It's essentially a low pass and a high pass combined to give me a band pass filter. Similarly, I can combine them to produce, if you just bear with me while I set it up, if I have to think about this a bit. There we go. I've now set this up to produce what's called a notch filter. So I now have a filter which allows frequencies in the high range and the low range to come through my filter, but cuts out frequencies in a notch. So if I desire to remove a certain range of frequencies, I can set it up to do so like that. Those are the four main types of filter which are available in the SubTractor. They're essentially combinations of two filters, a high pass and a low pass, and I can then combine them to make a band pass and a notch filter, what's called a notch filter in the SubTractor. And in the next session I will come on and we will talk about how those things are replicated in this area of the SubTractor here. Okay, thank you for watching, and more on filters next time.